We just spent the last few weeks taking the engine out of that Hellcat and jamming it into this 350Z.
It fits.
Sort of. There was a lot of cutting and even more grinding, but at the end of the day, with our swap kit from LOJ Conversions, we're able to adapt this Hellcat engine to the stock 350Z transmission and somehow jam it into the engine bay. One would think that that's the hard part of this whole deal, but would you believe me if I told you that the real hard work's just beginning?
The drivetrain itself might be in place, but by the end of this video, we need to make it run, and that's where things get complicated.
I was gonna ask, where do we start, because we have so much to accomplish, but it looks like you've already made that decision. And I'm pretty confident I know exactly why you decided to go with this.
We gotta start with the looks, right?
I knew it. Now, I do think that not only is this gonna look awesome when we get it done, but I believe this is gonna be one of the easier cooling system components to figure out.
It's our supercharger heat exchanger, which is essentially a secondary radiator just for the supercharger.
Now, since we're putting something in a place where there was nothing meant to go from the factory, we're gonna be real strategic about how we mount it.
If it's too far forward, it won't clear the bumper.
If we move it too far back, the in tank is gonna hit this end plate where the front bumper beam mounts. So what we're gonna do is place it as far back as we possibly can and hope for the best.
The master plan here to get this heat exchanger where at least I think it needs to be sitting is to get a little tricky with the bracket design and make it so the cooling lines run through them.
Way better than what I expected.
They don't call me a professional fabricator for nothing,
Who called you like that?
Really though, I am pretty happy with the way this turned out. I had originally planned to weld the bracket to the bumper beam here, but then I kind of thought better of it, and once we installed the heat exchanger, I realized we weren't going to be able to remove the heat exchanger if it leaked, got damaged, or failed, so we just went with bolts through the bumper beam instead. That looks good. That actually looks better than I thought as far as fitment too. It's off the power steering cooler in there. Not that we couldn't relocate that if it was an issue. I can't even pretend that doesn't look awesome. That's one of the coolest parts about doing a forced induction car. Something big and shiny in your grill. That was a Paul Wall song, right?
That's it. Whoa, look at that.
That's about where we're supposed to be. Oh, wow. Now, the fancy new heat exchanger, that's cool and all, and that's not at all a heat exchanger pun. That was completely natural. But it's not going to do us much good unless we can actually run coolant through it. For the pump, we're going to run one of these guys. It's an Aeromotive Universal Water Pump. Also, it happens to be the exact same pump that I ran in my Demon truck build. The biggest challenge when it comes to these is where are we going to put it? Because they do take up a decent amount of real estate, and in a build like this, we have significantly less to work with than we did on the truck. I was originally thinking that we'd do it on the lower driver frame rail, the same place we did it on the truck, and the same place they run them on Hellcats, but I think we came up with a better idea. We are going to try to stick it right down here on the back of the bumper beam. That way it'll be completely tucked away and it'll give us a ton more flexibility for line routing.
Basically, this is art. Can we call it?
Modern day Picasso, Idea with these holes is that when I stick it in through that dude's eye, it's going to come out right there exactly like I planned. And then straight into the pump. That'll take care of one of the major components we got to find a home for. The other one, this guy, and if you think it looks familiar, it's because we've used it in pretty much every Hellcat swap we've done to date.
It's a factory Hellcat expansion tank that we're going to use to bleed and fill the system.
So the coolant runs through the intercooler bricks that are inside the supercharger right there. You can see this rectangular area on the supercharger. That's where the brick sits. This needs to be as high or higher than they are.
Lucky for us, there's an unused threaded hole in the valve cover, which will give us the perfect spot to mount this. From there, it's just a matter of installing our fittings, running our coolant hoses from the heat exchanger to the pump, and then up to the back of the supercharger, and that's a wrap on the heat exchanger system.
So, I missed the payments on my credit cards, and I think that we have to pay the consequences now.
Video shows this man getting into his car as it's being repossessed. Then he tries to get away.
Seriously, now he's gonna get some header fabricator. Hopefully, after this, we should have everything to start it for the first time.
All right, 1/2 of one header down. I cut the head flange in half because I have to make these two separate pieces. It's basically like making two separate headers that join into one collector so that they can both be removable easily in the tight constraints that I'm working with. Made a little heat sink so that this flange does not warp. It stays bolted down the whole time I'm building this. And yeah, purge the inside. All the welds are purged. I made these collectors previously. There's just 4 15-degree bends that you cut 2 times each. Nice. One side is almost done. Have to prep and weld these two. On this side, again, these are separate. But everything is made in the car. I have no fixtures to go off of. I put the flange back on the engine under the car, bring the tube under the car, and mock everything up like that. So it takes a little longer, but you get a precise fitting, good clearance header. And many hours / days later, we are done. We are fitting good. There's a steering shaft in there. There's a starter with plenty of clearance. Dual 3-inch X-pipe, V-banded, out to some vibrant mufflers, and 3.5-inch tips. Should flow good, sound good, and be relatively easily removable.
Ain't it nice when you just send your car away and it comes back ready to run? Well, almost ready to run.
Come on.
From the hardware side.
But this is more motivation to make it run,
It
right?
is. You got to get to work right now on the trailer.
Are you ready to say this?
I'm ready.
I didn't expect this at
I
all.
didn't expect it. We popped the hood and it's purple. Did not see that coming. Josh, our fabricator, he didn't mention anything about doing it in titanium. It was just supposed to be an aluminum intake, and he said he ran out of aluminum and just used titanium. Let's see, what else do we have here? You can't even see the headers. They're so far down there. Whose idea was it to put this big engine in this little engine bay? The outlet on the Z radiator and the inlet on the motor, they were 2 different sizes. It looks like he just welded a completely new fitting onto the radiator. Now we just run one straight silicone coupler across. We got a new coolant expansion tank. Oh my God, look at those headers. They look sick. There's our lower radiator hose going to the outlet on the Hellcat engine. What else do we have? The exhaust. Check this out.
JDM style muffler.
It really does look like the traditional, like, angled 350Z. You know, if you're coming up from behind, you're not even gonna know this thing as a Hellcat engine. Now that Josh has finished up the radiator and a lot of the other cooling, we've done the heat exchanger, except for a few little odds and ends. We need a couple fittings to completely finish that. You just did the power steering cooler, all right?
Yes. What do you think about that?
Terrible job, but hey, we'll call it done for now. It's fine. Anyway, we've cooled about everything except the most important thing, oil. So now we gotta take care of that. One of the cool things about these Hellcat engines is these stock fittings, which have these weird connectors on it for a stock oil cooler. You can simply unscrew these ones and thread in an aftermarket -12 O-ring fitting. It makes it super simple. You don't have to hunt down anything weird. It makes it ultra easy to convert to some type of aftermarket oil cooler.
That looks pretty factory, you know?
Well, the cooler's not. This is factory, albeit not factory for a, what is this, a Nissan? I almost said it's a Hellcat, but no, it doesn't make any sense. So the cooler's just a set trap unit, super simple, super lightweight unit. The bracket though, I believe this is what they call recycling. This is a transmission tunnel cover from a C6 Corvette. Just hack that up a little bit, boom, mounting bracket. What do you think?
Solid.
She ain't going nowhere. Now, the original plan with this oil cooler was to run straight fittings out of the bottom of it and then 90-degree fittings on the end of it. It's the most cost-effective way to do it, but once we got them on there, it just doesn't sit that well. I'd really rather the lowest point of the car not be the oil cooler lines. New plan time. We're gonna pull those straight fittings back out and install these banjo type fittings, which are $60 a piece. It's disgusting. But hey, when you pick up this much ground clearance, in worst case scenario, it potentially saves your engine down the road. I think it's a worthy expense. And now that we got 99.9% of the cooling out of the way, it's time to start worrying about what's actually going to control this engine. Starting with, of course, our Holley ECU.
Are you taking a nap or something?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. Yes. Even with the limited space, though, we were able to tuck this one back in here really nice and neat. I think, keyword think at the moment, we're gonna be able to run all our factory dash panels. Not only is mounting it over here gonna give us a ton of room for all our Holley wiring, but we can even reinstall our stock ECU. I'm not sure what exactly this controls at this point, but there is still one connector on the body harness that plugs into it, so I suppose we should probably do it. Now that we got the ECU out of the way, it's time to move on to the next thing that's definitely 110% gonna give me back problems installing, our gas pedal. This is our Hellcat gas pedal. To control a Hellcat engine, we need one of these guys. In design alone, it's very different than the 350Z pedal. While this is a drive-by-wire, this pedal's metal. It's mounted on a huge metal mounting bracket. This one's a one-piece pedal and bracket assembly. It's all plastic. That aside, the angles are really similar. They have, I don't know, what's a 45-degree bend, we'll call that, Fernando?
Basically.
So I think as we start to take this one apart, we might find that they're not as different as we originally thought.
I'm actually thinking that we can use the metal bracket off the Z pedal to help mate the Hellcat pedal to this chassis.
It might not be the prettiest thing in the world yet, but I think we're about in the right place.
We're in the money here.
What's that sound like?
Queen, queen, right? That's
Just
what
like that. You're gonna be moving in the car like that?
This guy's gonna make it torque.
So it does look like it's pretty decently aligned. The only thing I don't like is I think it needs to be spaced over just a little bit further that way. It's a little close to the brake pedal.
I mean, is it?
Visually from here at least, yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about.
But remember, this is a burner machine. We need this.
Right about now is when we all realized exactly how close this thing was to starting for the first time, and it kind of turned into an all hands on deck type approach. Next up to bat, Tim with the wiring. As per usual, Tim absolutely crushed this wiring. The entire engine harness is wrapped up. We got a lithium-ion battery by anti-gravity. The Holley ECU, that's done. The intercooler pump, the radiator fans, it's all ready to go.
There's really only a few things we have to do. Fuel lines, fuel pressure regulator. One other part on the fuel system that's pretty much on every single build we do at this point is an ethanol content sensor. This is gonna give Fernando the option to run E85, 93 octane, or really anything in between.
Now, one of the only downsides to running E85 is you consume so much more of it. So it's a virtual certainty, just like we did in this car, that you're gonna need a bigger fuel pump or 3 and an aftermarket feed line to make sure that engine's getting enough fuel when you really need it.
Now from the factory, these don't have a fuel return. So for our fuel return, we're gonna get a little creative. We ran new feed lines all the way up, as you guys have seen. So we're gonna use the stock fuel feed line as our return, just to save a few bucks. But feed is more than big enough to use as a return, even on an aftermarket fuel system like this, so why not? For the lines we had to make in the engine bay, it's a little more complex than that. We mounted our fuel pressure regulator over here. This T-fitting coming off the front of the rails, that's our return. This lower dash 8 fitting that kind of looks like it's coming up out of nowhere is coming from all the way down there. That's the one that goes all the way to the back of the car through our fuel filter, through our ethanol content sensor. That line tees off here behind the motor and feeds the back of each fuel rail. Now, I'm not gonna pretend that I was ever the best at math, but by my, rough calculation here, we have 3 things left to do before we can start this. And they're pretty simple, right?
Gasolina,
See?
oil,
See?
and don't be nervous and crack it, right?
Oxygen centers was the next answer. But yes, those are the 3 things. I guess, getting over the nerves.
This is the first time in my life that I put an E85 on one of my cars.
Welcome to the club, buddy. It's beautiful. It's so dirt cheap. It's a nice, cheap gas. It smells awesome.
Yeah. And of course I have to match the can with the car, right?
Well, it's a different shade, but
It's orange. So everybody's debating here why I didn't put a cam on it, because he got a C6006, right? They're making fun of me because they're gonna gab me. Yeah, you should do a cam, right? CVD09, the tuner, elite, everybody in the shop up. CVD09 is still stock, like relax.
Well, theoretically, I'm going to present a really well-balanced argument here. A cam could actually help your transmission. If it shifts the power up higher in the range, less low-end torque, it could be beneficial. You could save your transmission by putting a cam in it, right, Thought?
That's a sound argument,
It
100% sound argument.
Put a cam on it.
So here's the challenge. I got it for you.
Okay.
If I go in the comments of this video,
Oh my.
here we go. All right. It said Fernando needs a cam, and it gets how many likes that comment got to get? And don't make it unobtainable. Come on.
I think we can get solid 10K.
You heard him. He's gonna stick to it. I'll make sure of it.
Oh, oh!
Hey, you're not technically supposed to spill the oil, just so we're clear.
It's supposed to go inside the
Yes,
engine, right?
you put that inside the engine. Jokes aside, that is one lesson I learned on these as well. If you have a funnel with a massive opening like that, you can fill these things too fast and they'll start pouring out of here. I have my valve cover flipped, the breather's on the backside. Mine started pouring out of the breather as well, so just use a funnel with a small hole or kind of regulate the flow, I guess. Now, one thing we have to check before we start it are the fuel pumps. We haven't powered this fuel system at all. So let's see what's leaking. Hopefully nothing. You can hear it, it's still running. I don't know how much pressure it has at this very moment, but at least at the front of the car here, we're solid. I think it's time.
It's my time to turn it on, right?
It's your time, go for it. Oh, cut it.
Oh, pressure?
Very low.
There's always something, right?
Look at the car. It's a Hellcat and a 350Z. There's gonna be an issue or two, right? I mean, just minor details like low oil pressure. You still have to take a second and appreciate the fact that this thing just fired up for the first time. It runs. I mean, we might have a catastrophic issue somewhere, but it runs. You built a Hellcat 350Z. Well, we got oil in the oil filter. That was checking things the manual way. Congrats on the new build, buddy. Come on, congrats. Don't leave me hanging. These oil pressure sensors are in kind of a weird location. To get to it, you gotta pull the alternator off, but either way, we did it. And the sensor on the left, this is the one that was in the car. And while it plugged into the Holley harness, this is the specific part number that it calls for in the Holley manual. They're different. While they look physically the same, I'm thinking maybe this one outputs a different kind of reading, and the Holley just didn't know what to do with it.
What's your confidence level right now, Fernando?
Whew. I would say a solid 10. It's gonna work.
10% or like 10 out of 10?
10 out of 10.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna be good.
All right, 1 pound of oil pressure right now, so that could theoretically be reading right.
Cool.
Go ahead, crank it up. Shut it down. Shut it off. Read 0 now. Now, for obvious reasons, I'm getting significantly more worried about this. On the end of the sensor, the new sensor we put in, that we just took back out, of course, there's no oil. So we have one last thing to try here before we get to all the stuff that's not so pleasant. And if this ends up fixing this, we're gonna have another discussion about phrasing and wording by parts manufacturers, but we won't talk about that until we determine if this is the issue or not. What we did was simply swap the inlet and outlet of our oil filter relocation kit. Now, let's see if it works. Good, we got it. There we go. Boom, all right. All right, finally. So that's good news and annoying news. This is awesome, I'm happy about it, but this is annoying. So we had to run lines off our engine block to the oil filter relocation kit. And this reads, the bottom port on the engine block is the inlet, meaning oil goes into it. The upper port is the outlet, meaning oil comes out of it. At least to me, that means the flow of the oil comes out of the block to the inlet on the oil filter housing, then out the outlet on the oil filter housing, and back into the port on the block we were told is the inlet. Nope, it's the other way around. Outlet of the block goes to the outlet on the filter housing, and then the inlet of the filter housing goes to the inlet on the block. So theoretically, it's doing this. I don't know. We switched them. It works. Stupid instructions. Let's put this thing back together and let it run for a second. How about that, Fernando?
I can breathe now.
Oh, there we go. It's a beautiful sight, isn't it? 73, 60, 73. Yeah, you get it. Oh, I'm done. It sounds so good. This has been not only a long day, this has just been a long build at this point. What do we gotta do next? We have to,
Coolant system.
yeah, we've done all this stuff. We just have to fill it. We just really wanted to start it today. We gotta do all this, and we have to take it outside of the shop. We're gonna make sure this thing dries. You don't need to order another set of rear tires. You just knock that out now.
Our emotions been like here, there,
Oh, yeah.
here, there, like it's. I don't know what else to say, to be honest with you.
Other than adios. I suppose.
Adios.
Down on the passenger frame rail, that's the driver frame rail. Put it on the passenger. Dude, I have a new plan for building cars. We're just gonna start dismantling the old builds, putting them in the new chassis. It'll take a quarter of the time. You look like you're struggling there. You been to the gym lately, or?
No, I'm just like,